Hi everyone. So, are you a Jimmy Dore subscriber? Jimmy Dore is a comedian from America who, first of all, if you're not a subscriber, why not? What's the matter with you? And he is a journalist now. He used to be a comedian. He still calls himself a comedian, but he's doing a journalist job, and he's doing it better than the mainstream media over in America, time and time again. He did this video on the 14th. This is while I was on my break, and I saw this while I was on my break, and he said CNN caught lying about Venezuela by New York Times. He was covering a piece in the New York Times, and this is the New York Times. You can see there the date, March the 10th, 2019, and he did that a few days later. And the reason he did that video is because New York Times, with all the weight behind them, and all the reporters and all the money they've got behind them, and obviously the history and the the gravitas that this wonderful publication has got, they got to this scoop about the footage of that aid truck in Venezuela that was burning down. And CNN had said that their journalists had seen pro-Maduro folks set fire to them. Now, it didn't take long before independent media found out that it wasn't actually Venezuelans that had done this all. It was actually Colombia that had done it. And it was 10 days before they'd done this report. And the reason Jimmy did his video is because he covered it on the 28th of February. This guy, in his, this comedian in his, his garage, doing this news show, has covered CNN lying about the Venezuelan aid trucks 10 days, a full 10 days before the New York Times did. A full 10 days. This is the state of the media in America, and obviously over here it's the same as well. This is what he said at the time in that video, by the way. I want to just say this because he's genius. How is it that he says, how is it that I, a guy who smokes pot when he wakes up in the morning and spent 20 years in nightclubs entertaining drunks, can do a better job of covering the news in Venezuela than CNN's team? And, obviously, covered the story, 10 days before the New York Times did. He wasn't the only one that covered it, because I covered it as well, on exactly the same day that Jimmy did. This report from the Grey Zone and other reporters who pieced together all the evidence to say that, yeah, it was actually from the Colombian side that set fire to this aid truck. It wasn't Venezuelans at all. CNN reporters were lying. And I said I also smoke pot in the morning, and I also covered the New York Times expose 10 days before they did, from 8,000 miles away from a council flat in the Black Country in the UK, from my front room, on a budget of less than $1,000 a month. I'm covering Venezuela better than the media in America are, including the New York Times. It takes them 10 days to catch up with me, let alone, the other great people in independent media who all covered that story, and there were many of them. Jimmy and I weren't the only ones. There were many who covered that debunking of that ridiculous CNN story. See there's the date, 28th of February, I released it. This is the latest crap that they were having to put up with in Venezuela. This is the latest shit that they're trying. Now, the reality is, of course, it's not all, pro-opposition in Venezuela. We'll get to that in a minute, but Reuters Venezuela tweeted this out. They said, desperate Venezuelans swarm sewage drains in search of water. They say there's a water shortage in Venezuela. We have to go in to help them. Obviously pushing the pro-humanitarian aid line that the Americans have taken, which is pathetic. This is the article. The desperate Venezuelans swarm sewage drains in search of water. But if you go to actual, alternative media sources and trusted media sources, you can see there Venezuela analysis. Eva Bartlett's retweeted it, and we're on to them. Reuters Venezuela insisting on a lie, says Venezuela analysis, hoping it will stick. Water coming out is from an underground spring that flows into the Gaia River. This has been widely reported, and some of the people at the scene were interviewed at the time who assured that the water was not sewage, but they ran it anyway. That's the sort of stuff we're up against. Now, obviously, you know, they are all pro-regime change in the media. But if you go to another independent sources and trusted sources, we know where to find them now. This is Sarah Abdallah. Huge rally by the people of Venezuela against the United States. Coup attempt, sanctions and intervention on the streets of Caracas yesterday. These are the Venezuelans that the corporate media, Marco Rubio, Bolton and Elliot Abrams, want to pretend are non-existent. BBC don't even want to mention Elliot Abrams in any report. This is the guy who's overseeing this Venezuela coup now, who's been convicted of, you know, shipping arms in through aid deliveries into other South American countries to start coups and civil wars, lied about it to the Senate, was convicted of it and then pardoned by George Bush, and now he's doing exactly the same thing, and the media don't want to cover it. But I mean, look at the size of this crowd. Look at the size of the crowd. This is, I mean, this was, so this was what, in the last 3 or 4 days. Have you seen any coverage of this in the media, in the Western media, on the CNN, in the New York Times, the Washington Post, MSNBC, Channel 4, BBC, Channel 5, Guardian? Have any of them shown any of the, look at the size of the rally. They'll show a Guaido rally when there's 200 people there. Why aren't they showing this, the support for Maduro? Well, they won't, will they? Because it doesn't follow the narrative. It doesn't follow their regime change propaganda bullshit that they're feeding everybody, so they don't show it. They only show one side of the story. Here's the truth when it comes to Venezuela. Here's the truth. If you want to help Venezuela, drop the sanctions. Put pressure on America, put pressure on our government to drop the sanctions and give them their gold, free up their gold so they can start producing oil again and start taking care of themselves again. And stop with the bullshit. They're accepting aid. Just not from the country that's trying to bloody overthrow their democratically elected government and has been doing for the last 2 or 3 decades. Thanks for watching. Please make sure you're still subscribed and click the bell below for a notification of when I drop further videos. Also, click through to my website to find out ways which you can support me. I can't do this without your support, and I really appreciate it. Till next time, peace and take care.